workshop of the growing season. My name is Katrina Lashley, Program Coordinator of Urban Waterways here at the Anacostia Community Museum. I'm joined by our garden facilitator, Mr. Derek Thomas. Today's special guest, Alcione Amos. Today's workshop is a hybrid. We have some attendees zooming in, while others are joining us on site at the museum. Thank you for spending a portion of your Saturday morning with us. So our regular attendees know that our workshops come out of our Urban Waterways project, which is currently in its 12th year. We've been documenting urban communities and the relationships to their waterways. We understood from very early on in the project that waterways are one entryway into conversations and documentation of ongoing relationship with the environment, both built and natural. These workshops are about our connection to place, our connection to green spaces, and they incorporate several major themes. The first one is gardens as places of community and connections to our cultural past, gardens as sites of stewardship, gardens as sites of interdisciplinary knowledge, and gardens as part of larger social networks. And finally, and very importantly, gardens as sites of empowerment and access to good nutrition and healthy living. Some of you may recognize Alcione. Our last growing season was inspired by her research and book, Barry Farm-Hillsdale, Historic African-American Community. Last year, we focused on the modern truck garden, informed by the presence of truck gardens in historic Barry Farm. For a quick reminder, truck gardens are small-scale productions of fruits, vegetables, and flowers for direct sale to market. In reading Alcione's book, I was struck by the power of stewardship and expertise in land that allowed Barry Farm to thrive in all senses of the word. This season, as we garden, we explore Barry Farm once again through the lens of loss of land and how it's possible to maintain a connection to place through gardening in small spaces. This history of loss is also explored in our newest virtual exhibition, We Shall Not Be Moved, Stories of Struggle from Barry Farm-Hillsdale. Our goal is to connect us to the legacy of gardening, connection to green spaces that have been present in communities east of the river, but also in your own communities as well. I'm going to turn things over to the garden, where Derek and Alcione are going to set the stage for our focus in gardening in small spaces. We'll have a Q&A with Alcione toward the end of the segment, and then Derek and our garden team are going to get to work in the garden, and we'll be taking your questions throughout. Once again, thank you so much for joining us as for part of your Saturday morning. And Alcione and Derek, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Katrina. Thanks for that wonderful introduction. And thanks for everyone that's here, everyone that's on Zoom. And as Katrina said, you know, one of the things that we wanted to look at this season is not only why we garden, but, you know, because of the loss of land, how we have had to develop new ways of gardening. And, you know, with the last 2 years being any indication, you know, people have contracted in. And so what we can do in our spaces, whether they be small spaces or whether they be big spaces, to achieve our gardening goals, you know, and we're going to be definitely unpacking a lot this season. Today, we're going to be talking about kicking off small space gardens and different techniques that we can do that. But first of all, we wanted to get into the history of it. And that's why we have Alcione here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming out again. It's so good to see you.
I'm very honored to be here, you know, very honored to be able to participate.
Yeah. So I want to jump right in, and anybody that doesn't know, Alcione has done a wonderful job of documenting, I should say, the rise and fall of Barry Farms in Hillsdale, because the map behind us, which you'll be speaking of, you know, at one point there were 1 acre lots that people had to buy, and they took care of them. And what we're looking at, you know, last year, as Katrina said, we talked about the truck garden, which was a way for people to create commerce for themselves when there was no other way for them to make a living. And they grew vegetables and they took it to market. And this year we're talking about the loss of that land and what happened. You know, so the title of our workshop, you know, what is the significance of Give Us Land?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because during the Civil War, at least 50,000 African Americans fled into Washington, coming from Virginia and Maryland. histories of as the army, the federal army went into Virginia, people just took off to Washington any way they could, walking, on horses, on carts, on boats, coming on what is the fancy wharf today. It was where they arrived in Washington. And after the Civil War, they were living in very difficult circumstances all over Washington. They would build, these makeshift settlements, including a very big one on K Street in downtown Washington, where all the fancy lobbying firms are today. There was a huge settlement of newly freed people, made of recycled materials. And the owner of the land was very upset. He wanted his land back. So he went to the Freedmen's Bureau, which you probably know was the organization created by the federal government to help with the newly freed people. And he talked to the head of the Freedmen's Bureau, General Howard. He said, I want my land back. What can you do about it? And he said, okay. He took off and went to visit the settlement. And he called all the men to talk to him. At that time, women didn't have a saying. It was just the man. So he called the man and said, all right, guys, not he didn't talk like that, of course, but you have to leave because this land doesn't belong to you. The people were like, what are we going to do? Where shall we go? And he then asked, what would help you be self-sufficient? And they immediately answered, give us land, give us land. Now, these people are rural people. They know what to do if they had land, right? They had just come from the plantations. So they knew exactly what to do to take care of themselves. So that gave him the idea of creating a settlement farther from downtown Washington, as far as he could find at the time, and organize the settlement in lots that he would sell to people. Nothing was free. You would have to buy the lots and then sell lumber for them to build their houses. And that was the creation, the first idea he had for the creation of Barry Farm-Hillsdale.
What was so once they got the space, right? What was the layout of the community, and how did it help, or how did it bring about the creation of truck gardens?
Yes, let me talk about this wonderful map. I love this map. I mean, this is fantastic. Let me tell a little bit of history behind it. These are in the Library of Congress, but there were two maps. They were yellow, really old and everything. I am originally from Brazil. I have a nephew who is a photographer, and I told him I'm going to send you these two photographs, and I wanted to put it together as a wonderful map, and he did. So here you have it. But anyway, what the general did was he bought 375 acres of land from the Barry family on this side of the river, of the Anacostia River. And he divided those 375 acres into big 1 acre lots. These are all 1 acre lots. And people had to buy the lots, and then the Freedmen's Bureau would offer lumber for them to buy and build their houses. People would build their houses on the front of the lot, right here. And they were small houses. These were not huge houses, just 2-room houses. And they would occupy only 1%, 100, 1% of the whole area. So they had this huge area behind the house to cultivate. Now, the old people called it the back lot. And I talked to a descendant of one of the people who had built a house on Elvins Road. Where's Elvins? When I need you, right here. And he told me that it was like a football field. So huge it was. Now, on that lot, they could plant the truck gardens that we're talking about, the orchards, And they could have raised chickens and even hogs. Now, the state government was very upset about the hogs. They were always coming around trying to finish with the hogs, but hogs were big. Anyway, so this was the reason they had, the opportunity to cultivate their land.
Now, once these, and then you say they were purchased lots. Once these lots were purchased and people set up their homes and they started doing their gardens, explain to us a little bit about the loss of land, because I know that if anybody that is familiar with DC or other municipalities that exercise every once in a while eminent domain, so what we've got is a thriving community, 300 plus acres. People are building their 2-room homes. People are doing their truck gardens. People are gardening. People are becoming self-sufficient.
Right.
And can you explain a little bit about what happened and what precipitated the loss of land?
Right. Now, everybody knows what eminent domain is. It means that when the government decides it wants to build something, they can come in, take your land, and pay you whatever they want. I mean, they say no, that is fair price, but usually it's not. Right? You know that. Anyway, in the 1870s, it started.
1870.
1870s, right at the beginning of the community. They built a railroad right here, cutting through the community. The interesting thing is that the railroad cut through the community, but when it got to St. Elizabeth, they had to build a bridge at the edge of St. Elizabeth on the river, so not to cut through St. Elizabeth. So they could cut here, but not through St. Elizabeth. Now, the next decade, again, another thing to do with St. Elizabeth, they decided to build a sewage plant. And the sewage plant was built right here. Not on St. Elizabeth's land, they would pump the sewage out, and this part was lost. Then we move on to the 1940s, which was a time of tremendous destruction for the neighborhood, and the most loss of land was at that period. And they built Suitland Parkway right here, where Sheridan, it used to be Avenue, but Sheridan Road is. That's right here to connect Bowling with Maryland, where the president takes off.
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons for Suitland Parkway, was so that they could get the president
Right.
from 1600 Pennsylvania quickly
Right.
out to Andrews.
Exactly. And it was the Second World War. They said we needed the land, and people fought at this time. I don't think there was a lot of fighting when it happened here, but 1940s people were aware that we have to do something about this. So they tried very hard, but it was the Second World War. They said we have to do this, and we are going to do it. Hundreds of people lost their land and their houses here. And then also during the Second World War, right here, they put Barry Farm-Hillsdale. And Barry Farm-Hillsdale was built as housing for African Americans working for the war effort, Second World War effort. They didn't become public housing much later. The beginning was for all the African Americans coming to Washington to work for the war effort. The government didn't expect African Americans to come. And then they were surprised, oh my God, we have all these people, what are we going to do with it? Of course, segregated housing, they couldn't find where to live, so they built the Barry Farm-Hillsdale here.
Now, let me ask you, segueing, because most of you that have been in DC are familiar with Barry Farm's dwellings and the fact that they're now being converted into something else. But what I'm thinking is, I know how Barry Farms was in the 90s, and it was not 1 acre lots. So can you explain a little bit of how the impact, I mean, there had to be an impact for you. If you go from 1 acre down to 1/10 of that, what would the impact have been to these residents?
The oral history interviews of people who lost land was that we could never buy anything like what we had. You know, you couldn't buy a house that was like, because by then in the 1940s, it was not just the small houses from the Civil War, it was a, you know, much bigger houses and much better houses. And with all this land in the back, you know, no, they could never buy what they had. You know, they were just, and actually some people couldn't buy at all. You're talking about middle of the war. So when they built the Barry Farm-Hillsdale, some of the families that had lost their houses had to move in here. They gave them, you know, opportunity to move here. But you were talking about a house with an acre of land, and then you're talking about a townhouse in, you know, you remember how Barry Farm-Hillsdale was. I mean, at that time was very new, well, everything was very nice and everything, but still, you were moving from a house with a lot of land to a townhouse in a big development.
Now, I mean, just thinking about that and thinking about what you said about the acre of land and the chicken and the hogs and the gardens, it obviously had to have an impact on the sustainability. Because if a lot of people, if you had someone living off of Elvins Road before Steuben Parkway came through, and they were used to producing X amount of produce, and one of the things that we talked about last year rather, was that produce had to be physically moved over to the markets. Yeah. And the closest one that I think African Americans can go to was the Logan Circle Market. So they had to get it all the way over there. So not only were they uprooted, excuse the pun, but then what would they be able to do at the new residence to be self-sustaining?
I think that question of sustainability slowly, it had probably been slowly changing because, you know, people probably had been able to find jobs and were not so dependent on selling the produce to survive. But you probably still used to have your backyard cultivated to feed the family. You know, you still have the vegetables and the fruit trees and everything. And now that's gone, you know, so that's a financial impact. But I think it's, I think probably the biggest impact was psychological. Mm. You know, you don't own anymore your land. I mean, there was a lot of pride on people owning their own houses and their own land, and that disappeared. And the construction of the Suitland Parkway, I think, was the beginning of the disintegration of the community. By the 1970s, the community had disappeared, had been subsumed under an acquisition. When you talked about Barry Farm in 1970s, we were talking about the public housing. Right. Nobody knew anymore about Barry Farm-Hillsdale. By the way, Barry Farm-Hillsdale comes from the fact that people were upset in the beginning that the settlement was called Barry Farm because the Barry family had owned slave people. So they wanted to change the name. Eventually, the name was changed to Hillsdale because of the many hills on that area. Here, this is a flat area, but this area is all hilly, as you know. But the name never appeared on the official maps. And to this day, if you buy a house with this footprint or an apartment or whatever you buy, your deed is going to say Barry Farm. And many people ask me, but I don't live in Barry Farm because they think of Barry Farm here. I said, oh, yes, you do. And I tell them the story about, but the museum decided then to have the compound name, Barry Farm-Hillsdale, to honor the history of the community.
You know, one other question that I have, and then we're going to open up for participants, whether Katrina, I know that some of the people virtually may have some questions, but you know, one of the questions that I have is, we're talking the 1940s was when this really unraveled,
right? Yeah,
full scale,
right?
And you think about like the last 10 years, some of the participants that have been coming to these workshops, and people wanting to get back into the earth. And you think about in the 40s, how unsettling that must have been, not only psychologically, but, you know, just the fact that you no longer own. So you were a gypsy in your own town.
Yeah, think about if you were an elderly person who had been living in that house for, decades. You had passed on from, your a relative or your father or whatever. And then suddenly, the whole thing disappears. All your neighbors are spread all over. It must have been very, very unsettling. Very unsettling.
Yeah, definitely. Katrina, do we have any questions from Alcione from any of our virtual participants?
Hi, Derek, not yet. You can start on site with questions.
Okay. Does anyone have questions as it pertains to gardening or loss of community, loss of land for Alcione? Don't be shy. I'll pick people. back here.
So did the people of the community, did they get any reparations? Did they apply? Did anything come
They
about?
were paid, as I said, eminent domain, you were paid something. But as that we have oral histories from the 1970s, where some people still survived when the 40s, had been here in the 40s or had heard the stories. You were paid whatever the government wanted to pay you. And it wasn't enough to buy another house, not the equivalent of what you had. You're not going to find a 1 acre lot in Washington, D.C. in the 1940s. Now, forget about it completely, but in the 1940s, probably also very difficult. So they did get some money, but it was not enough.
Before you, I have one other question also. So Hillsdale, we know what happened to Barry Farm. What happened? We know what happened to the Barry Farm housing. What happened to all of Okay. So when they paid someone, say if I own this lot,
Right.
and they paid me for my lot, then what happened to this community? Was it redeveloped?
What happened was that a lot of people sold the land for, after the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s, developers came, bought the lots,
Got it.
and built the apartment buildings.
Got it. Okay.
The 3, 4, floors, apartment buildings. So in 1 acre lot, you might have 3 buildings.
So they displaced people just for commerce.
Right. Yeah, yeah. But you have to make the difference. Barry Farm-Hillsdale was here. Was it was the whole thing. Barry Farm-Hillsdale was here,
Okay.
built in the 1940s, and that's what was demolished recently.
Yes. You had a question?
Actually, I don't have a question, but I live in Arlington, and the exact same scenario happened to build the Pentagon, to the Freedmen's Building.
Exactly.
Rinse and repeat. It's the same exact thing. So that's what just made me think of that.
Yeah, and I just wanted to tell you one thing. If you go online and the museum's website, there's an exhibit there based on my book that talks about this whole history, but also at the very end, talk about African American communities throughout the United States that were destroyed in the same way or are being destroyed right now. And when I researched that, I was amazed. It's everywhere, up and down the United States, African American communities, highways cutting through it. There was one pinhook in Missouri that was flooded. And we are talking about 2000s, I think it was 2013. They opened the comforts of the dam and it flooded the city. And people had about 5 hours to leave. They couldn't, they could whatever they could carry. They couldn't take everything. So, this is happening today. It's,
You said that was in Missouri in 2013?
yeah, yeah. Take a look in the website of the museum and the exhibit that's there.
Well, I guess my question is quite similar to yours, Derek. As we see Washington, D.C. become gentrified and all public housing, is gone, and high-rise condos, etc. And these people being displaced, several of them have gone to Maryland. So I wanted to know, in that era, where did those people go?
Well,
after losing, an acre of land, where did they go?
They went, a few families went here to Barry Farm-Hillsdale. They were, allowed to move here. But others went around Washington and other African American neighborhoods, which, eventually were displaced too, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very sad history of displacement.
And there was at the same time, and I may be getting my timing a little bit confused, but when I moved into Columbia Heights in the 90s, my neighbors talked about moving into Columbia Heights in the 50s. And Sherman Avenue was the dividing line. And Columbia Heights was actually a tract of land that went all the way from Florida Avenue and 16th Street. And Malcolm X Park was actually built by this very rich man for his wife as a wedding gift.
Yeah.
But Upper Columbia Heights was given to like the bad stepsister for her to maintain. And she wrote into every deed in Columbia Heights that African Americans could not buy property there. Yeah. And so the people that live next door to me, they were given the house by a Caucasian family, and they were paying the Caucasian family until the 60s until they could legally buy that house.
But let me tell you,
because the evil stepsister passed away, and they changed. And that's why Cardozo High School is there too, because she never wanted that land to be developed by a developer. It could only be something that was actually part of the city. And that's how because Cardozo High School, if you've ever gone up 13th Street, it has the best panoramic view of DC.
Let me tell you about this. This area was between Anacostia, which was white, and African Americans could not buy land or houses. The deeds had that.
And you heard what she just said about Anacostia, right?
Anacostia was white.
Wow.
And Congress Heights was white. Now, Anacostia, people from Barry Farm-Hillsdale was bad enough that, in Anacostia, but they had to cross Anacostia to get out to the bridge. But if they went up to Congress Heights, they would be chased out. I have interviews of people saying, I was chased out of Congress Heights. We couldn't go there. We were chased out. So that was DC for you until probably the 50s.
Or like you said, Arlington and other neighborhoods throughout the US. Anyone else have questions for Alcione? Yes.
So I'm curious about how these shifts in like demographics can inform the current shifts that are happening now, particularly in historic Anacostia and Ward 8 at large. But, as we're noting, like history does repeat itself. So what are ways, so my question's multiple fold, right? Like, what are ways that we can like honor the history, but also have a more active role?
I think that everybody should be very aware of what is happening in their communities and participate in, whatever. Every community has an organization that's fighting to, help the community and organize the community. If you can find which one is in your community and participate in it, I would advise that. But as you said, history repeats itself. So.
And I think, I think one of the things, and this is a perfect segue, thank you. When Katrina started us off, she talked about what we wanted to address in these 6 workshops, and it's growing community. I was having a discussion with Margaret, who lovingly cares for the gardens here when we're not here. And I was talking about just that cycle. Because when I came here as a boy, I'm from the West Indies, I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, and we did not, we lived in off of Naylor Road, we lived in the projects. And I didn't know we were in the projects, but I had plants in every window of my mother's 1-bedroom apartment, and then once we moved out to Forestville, I had gardens, I had tomatoes, I had sunflowers, I had all of these plants, and we grew community, and I think that's what some of the things that I see in not only African American communities, but I think it's a bigger thing that we could unpack would be communities where it's working class, is that we don't even know our neighbors. There used to be a time if I needed milk, I would knock on your door and I'd say, can I get some milk? You know, we don't live that way anymore. Well, some people do. Some people do. Some people do. And those people have to teach us the right way of living. We have to learn how to grow community. When you talk about the questions about Ward 8 or wherever we want to discuss, you know, it's about everybody coming together and growing community. No pun intended. We do a little bit in the garden and we try to do our best, but it's truly about making sure that people understand what they have in their possession. And if they give it up, one of the things that you said that was so, it's just as true today, if not more so. Alcione talked about the fact that when people were given whatever reparations for their land in Barry Farms and Hillsdale, they could not buy the same 1 acre of land. So we have to make sure that people understand we have to protect. And that's one of the things that I want people to know with our garden this year. And that's, we're getting ready to jump in. If it doesn't matter the amount of space that you have, what's important is that if you think outside of the box, or who told me they were building a box, or think inside the box, we're going to show you how we can garden. And so that means we're going to go get back in here. We need to thank Alcione.
Thank you so much. One more thing, if you want to know more about it, you can buy my book.
Oh yes, who has one of the snapshots?
There is information in your bag, and if you want to step quickly and look at the map, you can do that too. So thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you.
We take a look at the map, and then everyone's going to join us in the garden. Alcione, thank you so much for coming out again. It has been, it's always a joy to see.
I have to say this was my first in-person presentation since COVID-19.
But your passion, I'm always so happy to see you. So thank you so much.
Yeah, that's very nice.
All right, let's get in the garden. We'll take a look at the map first. I mean, it's very, very powerful. And we're going to get some stuff set up in the garden.
That's wonderful. I have to say that.
That's mixed use, yeah. Oh, that's okay. So Katrina, we're going to get set up, and we're going to move up into the garden. Some of the participants are actually looking at what's going on. You had a question for me, or
Yeah, a follow-up.
okay?
Yeah, so when we think about spaces and gardening, part of the question that I wanted to follow up on, given your response, is that Ward 8, historic Anacostia, is experiencing a lot of new development. So places that were just grass or...
I'm putting this one just because I'm going to be with people. But go ahead,
Sure. Places that were grass, and I recently went through kind of informal interviews. Formerly garden space are now homes that are being built up. So that's kind
well, I think, and the question for those that are participating virtually is, how do we protect the green spaces that we currently have? And I think the big thing that you have to unpack is you have to be involved in your community. Otherwise, the city or wherever you live could take it away from you. So you have to manage what's going on in your community. The green spaces have to be maintained. And I think there's a larger conversation that everyone has to have with themselves, because we all have busy lives. We all have things that we have to do. So how do we take care of a park like this if the Park Service is not doing it? Or how do we take care of that corner lot that goes between, I'm in Brookland, that goes between Franklin and the little cutover, and how do we keep that triangle park from becoming condos? you know, because otherwise we'll be living in the concrete jungle. And so being involved in your community, going to those meetings, talking to your ANC, talking to your, you know, if you're in DC, talking to your representatives, you know, and if it doesn't work, go to the mayor's office, you know, be that person that knocks on doors, because we've got to protect the land.
Hey, Derek, you want to move over to the gardening portion?
She just, one of our participants just said she remembers this place. Yeah, we're back. So, you know, keeping with what we're talking about this season, there's several things that we needed to jump right into today. Margaret, if you can bring me one of the bags, please. And what I'm going to have our participants do today is we're actually going to be filling up portable bags. We're looking at how do we garden when we have a challenging space? And one of the things that we've been able to do here is have the raised garden beds. Anyone that has been a part of the workshop has, you know, participated or virtually has seen what we've been able to grow in these beds. And we've got 5 planting beds, and we've been able to grow quite a bit. Some of my folks are going to be checking on stuff from last year, like beets. We've got some beets that wintered over very well in spite of the winter that we had. And then we're going to be harvesting cabbage, and we're going to be planting back out more leafy vegetables. One of the things that I wanted to let people know is that this time of year, we're right at the end of April, and between now and the end of May, all of these cool season vegetables that you see, a lot of them are going to be discounted at the garden center because they're trying to push in tomatoes, they're trying to push in cucumbers, they're trying to push in a lot of the vegetables that are warm season vegetables. But a lot of these leafy vegetables, you can get a harvest or a part harvest right now if you put them in. So we're going to talk about that. And then the last thing we're going to talk about is what we can do if we have a compromised garden space. And so we're going to be planting these. These are actually sold as potato bags. And the reason they're sold as potato bags is you see how deep they are. But what I like to use them for is for things like tomatoes that like a lot more root space. If you grow potatoes in here, it has a little opening so that you can get in there, get potatoes out and keep the plant growing. But we're going to be planting out cool season vegetables. So Margaret, if we can give one to some of our participants, I need some of you guys, everyone's going to get one. I need some of my participants to actually get in the garden with me. We're going to harvest cabbage. We're going to harvest beets. We're going to check on some of the cool season stuff. So if we can break up into 2 groups, one group is going to be filling their bag, and then they're going to be coming back over here to start planting it out. And then whoever wants to come with me, we're going to check on our beets, and we're going to also check on our cabbage. And I need a pair of pruners. Can I get a pair of pruners? Thank you. All right, so everybody remember our last, well, just so we get caught up, I think you were at the fall harvest workshop?
Yeah.
Okay, what did we plant in this bed?
Cabbage.
And we put something in that's going to be important for another workshop, because we're also talking about pollinators this year. What is this in the back? No, in the far back, the little tiny, I don't know if you can get a shot of this. This little tiny, I was really excited. It's the species Echinacea. It's the species coneflower. I was really excited to have gotten it. It's doing very well. Remember, they were little tiny, they were little tiny just starter plugs. But what we need to do today, and we also put down the the pine needles, which I told you would help insulate this bed over the winter and keep insects off of it. We had a really bad experience last year where a lot of our cabbages got eaten by a worm. And so what we did was, because this is an all organic garden, we put down pine needles. And what the pine needles tends to do, the worms don't like to go walking across it to get to plant. So it stops them. It really helps to break that cycle. So we knew we didn't have the worms in this bed when we planted the cabbage out. Now what I need is I need a couple of people. What we're gonna do is this part is really, unless you're gonna use maybe just the leafy part for some smoothies, this is really not good. This is something that can go into the compost. And when your leafy vegetables start to do that, it's called bolting. So what it's doing is it's shooting up. It's doing what a plant wants to do. Well, we got way too warm. If you remember what the temperatures were like in February, we got way too warm in February. So a lot of the cabbage, instead of forming the heads that they should have formed, they just went into this mode. So we want to cut all this off. And then what I need for folks to do is actually start cutting. And if we want, we can stage the stuff that we're going to take home. Let me have one of the bags. We're going to stage that stuff up there. And then when we get done with the workshop, we can divide up our food.
I have a question. You said you could use the top of smoothies. Is it bitter? Because a lot of times when things go, like lettuce, it's okay. Is it bitter?
Cabbage stays okay. This is still sweet.
Okay. Not like the lettuce it is.
That's a really good question. A lot of times when this happens, the plant will actually change its taste. What really makes it get bitter is once the flower opens, because the plant starts to change chemically by pushing away a lot of the sugars. So this is still good for a smoothie. It's actually good cabbage.
So what part of that is good for a smoothie?
The small leaves. You don't want any of the stems or anything like that. So you don't waste anything. You can take just the small leaves, chop this up a little bit finer, put it in your smoothie. Even the bigger leaves down here. Now the bigger leaves down here, I made a coleslaw the other day. Best coleslaw ever. Right out of the garden. And another tip that I always tell people, if you're going to be harvesting, what you want to make sure, and I'm going to ask you to hold that for me. What you want to do when you get in here, you want to cut away as much of that plant as possible. Okay. Now, what you want to make sure is that you do not wash this plant before you put it in your refrigerator. Who can remember why we don't wash the vegetables before we put it in the Ziploc bag?
It stays fresher that way.
Right. Water will introduce bacteria and it will deteriorate. I can take this cabbage today, put it in a Ziploc bag like this, and in a month, this cabbage will still be good. If I wash it and put it in the bag, the water will make it rot, and within a week to 10 days, it'll be no good. So when you harvest your vegetables, resist from washing them until you're ready to use them. I've got thyme in my refrigerator right now in a bag that I cut in December, and it's still green.
One more question. So is this a different variety of cabbage? Why isn't it closed up?
It's not closed up because of the heat. We planted it in we planted it in the fall. A lot of people don't plant cabbage in the fall. They plant cabbage in late February, early April, and you never get a head of cabbage because it gets too warm too quick here. We had really warm temperatures in February. So what the cabbage did was, instead of starting a head, there's a little tiny head in there that's just starting to start up, but it's getting so warm that it's bolting. And that was the pieces that I cut off. Instead of starting a head, what it wants to do is wants to flower. In a normal year, if we had normal temperatures, this would have formed a head around late April, early May. And then by late May, it would do this. The head would actually come open, and then the flower would come out of it. So
I'm sorry. So what are they doing about the round ones that we find in the stores? Is it very controlled environment?
about the what?
How they're growing the round ones in the grocery stores that we're finding in the grocery
They
store?
have greenhouses that are climate controlled,
Light and all.
air controlled, light controlled. Yeah. So we've been growing food like that for a long, long time. Then you have places like Canada, you know, British Columbia. You have places that will grow things out still without that because the temperatures are still, you know, but there have been reports where like certain seafood is now moving further north. So there may become a time, if you like crabs, we may not have them. So everything is changing, but that was a really good question. How do they grow our food that we get to market? They have a very elaborate system. This, however, is all organic. So we are depending on Mother Nature and light and rain and all of that good stuff. So I want one person who wants to take care of, I need about 2 or 3 people to help me with the cabbage harvest. Okay. There's 3 more of these. Let me have those 3 that Hector had. You can put them over on that black tarp. Now be careful here because there's also something going on here. Can anyone else remember what we had in this garden last summer?
Yes, sunflowers.
Yes. Say that one more time.
Sunflowers.
Sunflowers. Now look what's happening here. Remember the birds ate a lot of the sunflowers? Well, guess what that is? That's a baby sunflower. So we're gonna try to keep those when we dig them out. Here's 3 pruners. Who's gonna be helping me with that? No, we're going to beets.
Okay.
You got yours. There we go. There we go. There we go. And then just take these over to the black bag for me, please. All right. Any other questions about what we're doing and why we're doing it for the cabbage harvest? Okay. The echinacea, please be careful because that we're going to leave as a pollinator plant. Okay. And we're gonna talk a little bit about pollinators, but we actually have a workshop where we're going to do about pollinators. So you guys help me out with this. Now let's move along here. This bed we just planted out. Now, if you want to see the difference, this is cabbage. This is what our cabbage looked like in the fall. So the cabbage that we're harvesting now has been growing since fall. And the cabbage that we just planted a couple of weeks ago are just getting established. And when we get over to the plants that we're going to be planting up today, I want you to remember the size of this cabbage actually it was a week ago. You see all the good new growth coming in. Plants will grow really, really quickly once you take them out of that little constrained market pack. So that's the thing. That's the reason why we've got the planting bags today. We've got the raised beds. Depending on the amount of soil that you have, you can absolutely have a great garden if you just use some of the techniques that we always talk about. We've also got arugula. Last year we did the arugula in the herb bed. This year we're going to actually put it in here. We're going to treat it as a temporary planting. Everything in this bed is a temporary planting because next workshop, which is going to be in May, we're going to be adding some of the summer plants in here. We may get a little jump on it this year because I want to have, last year we weren't successful with some of our melons, but this year what I may do is plant the melon seeds and let them have their way and we can harvest among them. But this bed for today is good as it is. The other thing that you can do when you plant out your lettuces, keep in mind, lettuce can be harvested. You can harvest lettuce intermediately throughout as long as you leave the crown in place. What does that mean? What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go in here, I'm gonna cut this, leaving about an inch. Now this is romaine. So what I'm gonna show you is today, If we want to have a little fresh romaine salad, what I've done is I've gone in here, I've taken, leaving about an inch of the plant above the ground. This is the crown. This is where everything grows out of. We left that in place. We're gonna go through here, harvest out some of our romaine. And it doesn't look like a lot when it's planted in the garden, but suddenly we have the start of a really good salad. So, and someone can take that home. Go. And you could do that to this entire garden, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna leave these, let these grow. And then we're going to, like I say, layer in. We're gonna stagger the plantings as we go along. Over here, where's my, there we are. All right, so last fall, we had, well, actually last summer, we put in beets. We harvested once in the fall, and then we took all the little stringy, puny, maybe we should throw them away, and we put them in for the winter. So let's see what they're doing. This was a beet plant that we were going to throw away. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through, because some of these are just put in. We just put these little ones in. And what you can do with the beets is, that's still young. You put your finger down, and if you feel that, that's the money part. This one, not yet. You can just use your finger, go right in there. Also, you can look at it. Now, I've also mixed greens into this bed. So I've got bok choy, I've got some arugula, I've got a lot of mixed stuff going on. But I want to see how many beets we actually have.
So the color of the leaves is not.
The color of the leaves is not an indication, nope. And it was a really tough, here's one. It was a really tough winter. So some of these may have died out. That's the one thing about your leafy veggies. I think most of the rest of these are newer. We had some crop failure here, which is another thing that you have to brace yourself with when you garden. Things die. Just because you plant tomatoes and make plans for a party in August does not mean you're going to have, you know, enough salsa from your homegrown tomatoes. So we got 3 really good beets. The rest of our beets didn't make it, but we oh, check this one. This one looks like a no, the little tiny leaves.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'll eat it. All right, we're gonna put this up on our area where we harvest. I think that's, oh wait a minute, this one might be. Nope. That one's starting, but it's, so next month when we come out, like we found out last year, they grow really quickly. So usually by May, maybe June at the latest, we'll be able to harvest these. And we've also got beets for you guys to do in your bags or take home today. As we continue along here, we've got more cabbage, we've got more arugula, and we've got more of the lettuce. This lettuce is actually a type called butter crunch. So this is not romaine, which is what over here. This is all butter crunch. Butter crunch is a really, really great lettuce. And what I want someone to do for me that has pruners, I want you to come in here and we're gonna do a little bit of housekeeping. We're gonna go in, we're gonna harvest all of this butter crunch. Any of the big older leaves, what we can do is we can toss them out here and we'll clean those up, put those to compost. But then any of the inner leaves, and when you get this home, if you've got a yellow leaf like that, you can absolutely get rid of that. But what I want us to do with the butter crunch today, I want to inspire it to grow more. And so by cutting all of this down, the romaine we like to have a little bit more perfect. The butter crunch we grow because of the taste. It's one of the sweetest lettuce that you can have. So we're gonna cut all the butter crunch down today. And then if anybody wants microgreens, we can also harvest the arugula today. Now the arugula, if you've never grown arugula, it can be an acquired taste. It's a little bit bitter, but it's really, really nice to add if you want to kick a little bit of spicy punch to one of your smoothies. It's really good.
So this cabbage is a different variety to the one over there.
No, this is the exact same cabbage that we planted in last year in October. This we're planting right now.
Okay.
The colors is a little bit different because it was, what's happened is a lot of these things have sat in a container that's too small. So the plant starts to lose its leaves because it can't sustain itself because of the root mass. So once you plant it out, you see how quick the crowns are growing out. They'll turn green really, really quickly. This lettuce we're going to harvest in the May workshop. So it's going to be ready in about another 35 to 45 days. Yeah.
So it's fast.
Yeah. And you don't have to harvest. Now, you do not have to wait for the perfect cabbage head. The leaves are what we're eating. I don't care if it's a round head or if it's loose leaves. I'm still going to chop it up.
Do you eat that little head? When the head is little like that, you eat that also?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. The parts are all edible. So a couple of folks, I need you guys here to help me out with the butter lettuce. Okay, and if you want, okay. I'm helping you out. Okay, please put it over there so we can share at the end. We've got two more stops to make.
Do you need help to cut these? Do you need help to cut these?
Yes, but you have to have, there's 3 pairs of pruners if you can divide them around. We're gonna head back over to the cabbage bed and so what we could do, anyone that's cutting, stay over there. Anyone that wants to, we've got one more thing that we need to do to get this bed prepared. So everywhere that we cut the cabbage, what I need us to do, and be careful with the irrigation lines, but what I need us to do is go in here, lift this up, shake this out. Once again, put it here so that we have, and anywhere that you see one of these, normally what we would do is we would leave these and let them regrow. This year, what I'm gonna do, I wanna add some broccoli here. So we're gonna do this anywhere that you see these little nubs. I just need one person in here doing that. Remember, I've got one sunflower here, another sunflower there that we're gonna leave. And I just want you to go through here, loosen this up a little bit. Anywhere that you hit the cabbage stump, you wanna take it out. Okay, and then can someone bring me a tray of broccoli? Okay. You want to do this? There we go. This is another sunflower, so be careful.
Okay. So those cabbage stumps are replantable.
You can, if you wanted to replant this will regrow. So if you needed more room and you had like the back part of the garden and you wanted to put this in, this would regrow. But for what we're doing today, we've got enough cabbage for next time. So we're gonna actually rotate this bed. We're gonna put the broccoli in, and thank you. And what I want to do is, once I've got one person doing that, I need one person with Margaret. Where's the little hand shovel? I need one person going in afterwards. If you didn't have a hand shovel, the earth in these beds are so nice and soft. You can basically dig your hole and get your broccoli plant in. And then you want to spread them about 9 inches apart or so. So you want to do the same thing there. You can put your tag. You missed one here. I got it. There we go. Put our tag at the beginning of our row. Go on through here. I'm just going to set those out. You want to space them out about a foot apart. And so there we go. And so if we can go ahead and plant out, we've got enough space here for 3 rows of broccoli, and we're still going to protect our pollinator coneflower. All right, herb garden. While you do that, I'm going to head over to the herb garden. Let's get the broccoli in. Katrina, how are we? Do we have any questions?
No questions so far from those coming in virtually, and it's about 11:34.
Okay. All right. So one of the things about small space gardens, and do we have our bags filled up? No. Okay. So there's I want everybody, if you're not doing one of those or helping out with the herb garden right now, go ahead and take the time to fill up your portable sack. You want to leave about 6 inches from the top clear. And then that's going to be what we're going to work on after we work on the herbs. So your portable sack is going to be taken home, unless you don't want to do it here. But we're gonna fill it up. We're gonna plant vegetables in it. It can go in your car.
And it wouldn't topple over.
No, you got to put something next to it. You got to put a.
So it'd be heavy enough. I'm going to the wine festival after this. So
Oh,
I
well,
don't know.
are you taking the plants to the wine festival? Are you taking us to the wine festival?
Oregano.
That's oregano.
Is strong enough for making this a hanging planter?
You can make it a hanging planter, or you can do like the one that I've got on the back there.
Oh,
They sell those hanging planters
oh,
too.
nice.
If you follow me, I'm gonna have questions. You may take home one of them. The hanging planters. I've got questions.
Of those over there, okay.
Yeah, I got questions.
Okay.
You got to be quick
I am.
because they're gonna be quick.
I am.
Okay.
Like a bullet.
All right. So this is our herb area. Last year, we put in some more thyme. We put in more sage. We put in more rosemary. We put in lots of oregano. So what we're going to do, and now the thing about herbs, it's the gift that keeps giving. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take our parsley all the way down. That's all parsley. It smells like heaven. We're going to put that on. Now, parsley that you plant out, who has planted parsley before? So parsley that you plant out,
I smell it.
but it also wants to go to flower. So it wants to bolt. It only does this the second year. So parsley, a lot of people pull their parsley out in the winter. Leave it in place because look at all the parsley that you missed. This is it trying to bolt. However, by me cutting it back, right, it's going to send up more leaves. And that's what we want. So you're going to be able to harvest parsley. And then in our next workshop, we're going to plant more parsley that you're going to be able to harvest all summer.
Could you plant one of those about the bulb to my root? No.
No, because parsley has a root it's what's called a tap root. So the root is a little bit deep. It might live. You could try to dig it up and it might live. But what I do is I like to just get more parsley and then take that, get rid of it in May and put in fresh plants. The oregano, as everybody knows, is it is a little bit of an invasive herb. It'll get into everything. It'll grow everywhere. But this time of year, what I like to do with the oregano is just give it a really good haircut. And if you wanted, this is a really good time to start dividing the oregano. So when they're done over there, this is a part of the old sage. When they're done over there, I'll show you what we're gonna do for people that want to take some oregano home. Because right now, I've got way too much oregano. Because remember, we're small space gardening. We have a limited amount of soil, but this is really, really good. And on the internet, you can Google, there's several great recipes now for oregano pesto. Everybody always thinks that you have to do pesto with basil. It never makes it to the pasta. I eat it with chips. It's really good. It's the exact same process of making pesto, but you're just using oregano.
Will the oregano root if you put it in water?
Yes, it'll root. That was a good question.
I do it with basil and other stuff never seems to work.
Yeah, the oregano will root if you put it in water. Thyme will also root if you put it in water. Now, the best way to look at thyme is any place that your thyme plant hits the ground, it's going to produce roots. That is a whole other plant. So if you want to take that home, you can plant that.
Derek, I tried my the Jamaican time, well not the Jamaican time, but international store, you know, the very flavorful thyme.
The big leaf one?
Yeah, I tried and it would not root in water.
Really?
Did you let it dry out? When you cut it, did you let it dry out? Or was it already in like a cold setting?
It was in a cold setting.
That's why.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If it's already in a cold setting, it's not going to root out.
Okay.
Yeah. I got pimentos at the West Indian market before Christmas. They had fresh pimento, which you never see. I tried to grow the seed; they all rotted because they've been refrigerated. Yeah, I've got maybe 3 plants that actually are from you. So we'll have to share share your plants this year. So what you want to do here is you want to keep going with
My sage and my thyme and my rosemary that you gave us last year is doing well.
good.
Yeah, it made it through the winter.
Yeah, rosemary had a really bad year. Go ahead and put that over there for them. Now, so we've cut this down quite a bit. The sage, if anybody knows about sage,
Yeah.
it will take over. I'm going to take the rosemary. I'm just going to cut the tops off of it. So that's the rosemary. And then with the sage, what I want to do, I want to figure out where it's coming from. So there's one here. I'm going to take this. I'm going to cut it all the way down. Once again, if you have recipes that call for sage and you want to put it in a bag, if you want fresh sage, do not wash any of these herbs until you're ready to use them. And with sage, if you want to dry them, you put them in a paper bag, leave the bag open. Every couple of days, turn it so that you make sure that it's drying the inside and that you're not getting any mold.
You know you make very good tea with the rosemary.
Yes. Yes. So I'm gonna balance it here for a minute. And try to figure out. Now this is a young plant that we planted last year. This is a plant that we planted at the beginning of the season. And you can see it's got really woody stems here, and it's got really young growth. this time of year, because if this is the maximum amount of space that you have that you're gardening in, you have to layer things in. You don't have room for all of this plant, but the plant is giving you cues that it's going to grow back babies. So you can take this stuff, you can harvest this now, and then by the end of summer, you've got a much more controlled plant that you're getting all of your good veggies off of. I'm gonna leave that like that. This one here, when we're done with the shovel over there, can I see the big shovel? Yeah.
Right behind you.
All right, so now, what I'm gonna do here. Don't be shy. Now, for wine festival people, you may not be able to take these and put them in your car. But for those of us that are going right home, we can plant these. Leave the window open like as though you had your. Katrina, as I'm working on this, let me know if I've got any questions that come through.
What are we gonna plant back there?
Derek, no questions.
Okay. Now, what I'm doing here, I shook off all the existing soil because say you wanted to share this with a neighbor or what have you. Anything that has roots are going to be viable and it's going to grow. Anything that doesn't have roots, you probably want to go ahead and add to your herb selection. Now, I'm going to leave that little bit in that corner, but I just opened up almost 1/8 of my bed for new plants. So all of this, we're going to sit over there. And what we're going to do is you can just pull it apart. If you want to cut it apart, you can cut it apart. We're just going to pull it apart. We've got lots of oregano. And as I'm looking at this garden, I'm also going to take out all of this thyme. Now, there's a reason the stuff that I cut, I'm not digging out. You can double stress a plant and then it'll die. Not cutting that means I've just stressed out their roots. You're gonna have to give it enough water. You might lose some of the leaves, but it's gonna come back. If you cut the aerial part, then you cut the roots, you just double stress that plant out. As hardy as a plant might be, that plant may not come back for you, okay? So that's why all of this time I have not cut. The stuff that I cut, I'm leaving there. Thank you. And the other decision I just made is that this one, which one? Yeah, this is, but I'm leaving the older one because they both made it. Last year we had failure over here with the sage. This is way too much sage. I'm not cooking that much.
Sage is like mint, it will take over your body.
Yes, I'm not cooking that much chicken.
Keep it for the turkey.
Right. Now, this is a really good plant. The one thing about sage, it doesn't really run. It comes right out of its crown. So you can't really divide this apart, but someone can take this home and have an entire sage plant. So now as you see what I've done here, remember,
we're working in areas where we have limited soil. I just opened up a big area here, another big area here. As this oregano comes back in our next workshop, we're probably going to take out another half of this. Okay, but I want more oregano. Okay, and I'm happy with this right now. We're going to put in more parsley later in the season. And now, as our bags have been filled, I want everyone that's got a full bag to bring it over. And we're going to do some work on portable gardens, is what we'll call this. And Katrina, if you take a look at this, we got quite a nice harvest for our spring beginnings. And we've got herbs, we've got some herbs that can be shared with people. Like if you've got a garden plot, your neighbor wants to get started, you could share a sage with them. We've got beets, we've got cabbage. And now what we're going to do is we're going to put together, these are portable gardens. And one of the guys asked me if we could hang this garden. If you've got a support that's going to hold it, you absolutely can hang this garden. There's no reason that you can't. It's just got to be a support that's big enough to hold it. Or if we can get a shot to the garden behind us, that's a vertical garden. So when you have a really challenging space, you can plant all of these out and you've got this wonderful vertical garden. So looking good. You saved my sunflowers. Thank you. Yeah, this little stuff this is all weeds.
Oh, this too.
Yeah, it's a chickweed. It's ephemeral, spring ephemeral weed. We'll just get rid of it. So we're good. This looks really, really good. They did a great job here. Before we get planting, Katrina, how are we doing on time?
It's 11:50, Derek.
Okay. Before we get to planting these beds, let's go check in real quick. Let's take a look at what this is. One of my garden warriors that's come back perennially. Tell us what we're doing.
Separating out the.
Yes, and why are we doing that? Here, you need a pair of pruners.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to rip it all apart.
Yeah, but why are we doing that? So that we don't have a whole clump still, right?
Right.
Very good. All right, let's take a look at what we did with the butter lettuce dact. Did you run out of soil?
Well, I am carrying this on my bicycle, a little bit too heavy.
Okay.
But I think with that, they survive the trip.
Yes. Okay. So, butter lettuce has been tamed. The one thing that you want to do, and Margaret, this is homework for you. We want to clean all this up because we don't want rotting stuff in the garden. We want rotting stuff in the compost.
Correct.
So we clean all this up.
Yes.
So that way we don't get any of the worms or any of the things that are attracted.
Yes.
Because when we're doing 100% organic gardening, we have to make sure that we are as unattractive to insects as possible.
Got it.
So we
Okay.
clean all that up. And that's your homework.
Yes. Got it.
I'm gonna throw this right out here.
Yeah. Mhm.
All right, now portable gardening, and someone has already claimed the sage, and they have got a portable sage garden that I'm going to take to my house. Thank you so much. But see, I mean, there you have it. And the other thing that you can do, if you can bring me over some of the lettuce. The lettuce up top that's in the pots. Now remember, the sage is going to live here all year round. So what if you're living at an apartment and you've got a little balcony, or you're living in one of the duplexes across the way and you've just got a little small front porch? What are we going to do so that we can make sure we garden? We're going to layer stuff in. So I'm going to take a romaine lettuce. I'm going to pop that in there. Now, what else do you like? Since this is yours, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So bring me, I see you have a beet.
Yeah. This is not replantable.
That one is not replantable.
That's
That one is
edible.
ready for you to eat. So bring me a couple of beet plants, please. Didn't know I was putting you to work.
I remember last year.
The beet are the red leaf ones. Yes. So what we're doing here is we're layering this in because the lettuce is going to come. It's going to grow out. It's romaine. We're going to harvest that. We're building this bed around what I hope is her favorite herb because she's got a lot of sage. And then we're going to take some beet plants. And we're going to put that in there because I saw. Let me get one more. Now this one has already started. Someone asked, how do we know when the beet's ready? This one's already started to set up a beet plant. So we got 2 beet plants in there. And then where's my oregano? May I have a piece of oregano, please? Thank you.
So that beet would be ready to harvest when?
In about, no, well, it depends. If you're giving this enough water, this should be ready to go by midsummer. Yeah. They're grown as cool season vegetables, but trust me, if you let them, those beets that we harvested today, a lot of people would not have left them in the ground all winter.
But mine died.
Yours died out.
Yeah, you told me to.
The winter that we had this winter was a real winter. Okay, where's my young lady? I embellished a little bit on your garden.
And I love you.
Okay, so you have your salve, your sage, which is gonna live. You have your oregano, which is gonna live. This is gonna be the annual part of your garden.
Okay.
So you've got beets and romaine.
Okay.
Come late May, you're gonna come back to the next workshop.
Yeah.
We're gonna have tomatoes and other plants for you. That you're gonna take these out. If the beets aren't ready, you could plant a tomato right in the middle of it. Okay, but we're gonna show you how this is all the space you need to produce food for yourself. We're talking about, we talked earlier about the limited amount of space that people had when Hillsdale and Barry Farms was broken apart.
Yeah.
Well, in this bag, I'm coming to dinner. I want a good one.
Is it Thanksgiving? I just
we-
found the turkey.
We can do Thanksgiving.
Okay. Labor Day? What else comes up?
Yeah, whatever. I'll come for all the holidays. Okay.
Thank you.
So everyone that has the bags, if you want to plant them out now, you can. We've got enough vegetables. Please share with friends and neighbors. We've got arugula. We've got broccoli. We've got beets. We've got cauliflower. We've got lettuce, both the butter crunch and the romaine. And then we've got stuff that we harvested. So, I mean, I think what my takeaway was today was we can definitely make this thing work in even the smallest of spaces. Now, I've got 2 vertical gardens. And who has the pruners, the red pruners? This one is, these are the, this is. All right, 2 more pair of pruners, please.
Pruners, he has one.
Okay, and 1 more pair. Katrina, did we get any questions in?
No, I just put a last call for questions to our virtual attendees. None have come in so far.
Okay. Anyone have questions, comments? Because we've taken our small space garden, which is our raised beds. Where's my young lady who's making a raised bed this weekend? Yes. So we've taken the raised beds and we've cut you down even a notch lower because now you've got portable gardens. Okay. So anybody have questions about this? What would be we're giving away pruners and 2 vertical gardens. What would be the most obvious question when you go from a small space to a micro space? What's the most obvious question as you get into the growing season that you should be asking me right now?
Should I thin? Should I thin my?
I heard her first.
Okay, can you repeat? Can you repeat?
Can you say that louder?
How much should you water?
Right.
Yes.
Oh.
You gotta be real quick for that. You get pruners. Now this is not let's make a deal.
I was asking where is the host?
This is not let's make a deal. But I'm gonna give you this, and then I'm gonna try to trade you up, or you might get a zone. Okay. All right.
Next question.
Next question. In a small space garden, a micro garden like this, what is going to be the most important thing that you do as an additive on top of the plants, bless you, on a regular basis?
Go ahead, Candace.
Say it one more
Compost.
time. Okay,
Compost.
there's another right answer,
Oh, okay.
Candace, that's right.
I was gonna say fertilizer.
Okay, what type of fertilizer are we using?
Organic.
Okay, all right. So now I gotta do one more question, and they're in the running for this, and then y'all are out. I just changed the rules. You can give me that back. You can give me back. This is let's make a deal. You can give me this back if you want to try for that, but you may not get that vertical garden.
Ooh, up in the States now.
Okay, are we ready to go?
Go
Okay.
for it.
All right, so you answered that first. So you got your pruners. Okay, you answered second. So now we're moving on. If you're going to travel this summer, so because things are opening back up, we have our masks off, we're outside. What is going to happen to your garden if you go away in August to those beautiful tomatoes?
No water.
Right.
They'll do what? They'll turn yellow and then they'll, okay. What do you have to put in place?
Some pine cones.
Some type of pine cones.
Pine cones.
or,
Something to keep the moisture in.
mulch.
Your neighbor that you're going to promise those tomatoes to. You call her up and you say, girl.
The person online answered that.
Someone online answered it. Very good, very good. You call her up, you say, young man, young lady, girl, however you call your neighbor. You say, I'm going away. I got half of those tomatoes for you when I get back. Please, I need you to water Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Okay?
Derek,
Yes.
Derek, just, you know, our online participant says, she wants her pruners. She can walk to your house to get them. Deborah Dixon.
Oh, hello, Deborah. Where are you? Wait a minute. No. You're getting demerits because you're not here. You're getting we're taking away, Deborah. Next workshop, you start -10.
Bring a pruner next time.
You can come by anytime, Deborah. Okay, we got 2 bags.
Okay.
And we got 2 big questions.
Okay.
You have to answer both of this one.
Half of it is best.
No, and this one I need to see a show of hands.
Okay.
Okay, no one yelling it out. When Barry Farm-Hillsdale neighborhood was created, how much land did they start with?
375.
No, not the 375 was the acreage. Don't yell out. How much land was each individual person?
1 acre.
Okay, next part of the question. This is for the bag.
Okay.
And it's to you. And if anybody else knows it, we're recycling it, so don't yell it out. How many rooms did the houses have that they were building?
2.
One of the bags are yours. Okay, the second vertical garden. Now, why did the name of Barry Farm, which was the owner that did the 375 acres, why did that name get changed?
I think it's because it was very linked to they were slave owners, but people wanted to change that.
Very good. What still appears okay, second part of the question. What still appears on your deed if you lived in Barry Farm-Hillsdale? What does your deed say? What does your deed say you live?
I think it says Barry Farm-Hillsdale.
Nope. Okay, no. Okay.
Do not sell to any Black people.
Nope. There we go. Can we say that louder?
Barry Farm.
What we learned today was, even though they changed, the community changed the name of their own community because they did not want to be linked back to the heritage. The city chose not to recognize their own change. And the deeds are still recorded as Barry Farm.
Yeah.
So you get a vertical garden. Everyone else, please. Katrina, do we have any other questions that have come in?
No, Derek, no questions.
Okay, how are we on time? I think we're about at,
Yeah, it's 12:03.
okay. One thing
So
I
I'll
want to
close
say
us
to
out.
everyone, I expect to see you back in this garden next month. If anybody has any questions before we wrap it up, we're out of time, but is there anyone that didn't get a chance to ask any questions that has questions? Oh, wait a minute. I still have a pair of pruners.
No, that's a
Gracias.
Let me use yours a second.
No, I have for Deborah. Are you Deborah's friend?
Yes.
Oh, so this is a conspiracy.
No.
Anyone else with questions? You know what, guys? I am so thrilled that we're here. I'm so thrilled that we're here. I'm so thrilled to see a lot of us.
Yes, yes.
Katrina,
Thank you,
I'm
Derek.
to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our first workshop of the growing season. We're very, very excited to be back on site with you all and also online. Please join us May 14th for our second workshop of the season, New Methods in Container Gardens. We'll be joined by our guest gardeners, John and Blanca Wood. So we'll have two people joining us to co-lead with Derek, looking at new methods in container gardens. So May 14th, we'll be sending more information out through the announcements. Please also check out our new website, in terms for our new exhibition, talking about the history of Barry Farm-Hillsdale. And a special thanks to Alcione Amos, who has done a lot over the years. All this research has been through her hard work and dedication to recover the history that was literally present in the community. So once again, thank you for supporting our workshop. We'll see you next month. Take care. Bye, Derek. Bye.
And Katrina, before we close down, everyone, please, Katrina is behind the scenes always, but this would not happen without her. Let's give Katrina.
And also Janelle too, who's in here this Saturday. Bye, everyone. Take care. See you next month.